The 9 Years podcast is brought to you in association with Season Master and the Window Workshop.
Lovely head of hair.
All right, everybody, welcome to the latest episode of the 9 Years podcast. I think it's 338. Who knows? You start to lose count when you get to my age, which of course is 30. Thank you very much for joining us, for downloading the show this week. I'm Nick Draper. I'm joined as always by the face of the BBC Sport website, Mr. Stuart Deacons. I feel like I'm talking awfully quickly, actually, Stu. Maybe because I feel like we're in a rush. We've got a lot to get through on this week's podcast. We are going to be joined in a bit by Jane Lonsdale and Charles Williams, who are two of the people behind the group pushing for an SGM, which has now been accepted, a Don's Trust SGM, to discuss some new resolutions. They're going to talk us through in detail about what's going on, what they're looking to do and why, and clear up a lot of confusion, which I know I've had. Really, really great chat. Really important as well at this time. So we thank Jane and Charles for joining us. We'll be with them in about 10-15 minutes time. Before that, Stu, we're going to have a quick look back at the week that was with the defeat in the league at Hayes Lane to Bromley, a new signing as well, and then we'll do the game and look ahead to visit to Cheltenham on Saturday and around League 2. We'll go straight in it with the Bromley defeat. We're not going to spend too much time on it, Stu, because I think most people watched it, to be honest with you. Only 450 could get tickets for Hayes Lane. They, in the end, are perhaps the unfortunate 450, to be honest with you. Many of us sat at home watching it on Sky Plus, and it sucked. It sucked so bad. You know what? Like watching Wimbledon in the days of Liam Trotter, it was that bad. Not as bad, obviously, but still quite bad. You didn't experience. Your experience wasn't too bad, was it? Your stream was okay, but I think for the majority, it was buffering, pausing, reload, refresh. Very difficult to actually follow the game, which might have been a blessing.
Yeah, I'm not too. Obviously, I know everyone can watch it differently, can't they? In terms of there's an app you can watch it. I've got Sky Glass, so literally just I go through the Sky app on that, and I've watched quite a few games on Sky Plus because obviously I like the league. It's great to be able to see League 2 games from a nerd like me, but it was okay. There was a couple of times where it froze probably for 2 or 3 seconds and then got back. But yeah, no, I didn't have the issues. The only thing I did have, I was at one point, I think when we conceded the second goal, I knew about 3 minutes in advance, which is really off-putting because you're trying to, there's a goal and you're trying to work out how we conceded it when the ball's over there. It's one of those sort of things. So that's the only thing that I had where I was a bit behind. But yeah, I didn't have the issues that a lot of everyone else had.
Don't spend too much time talking about the game as well. There's another element to the coverage. I'll do that at the end. But in terms of the game, I mean, was it just a bad day? Sometimes you have these days, don't you, where things just don't go for you. I feel like actually a post-match interview with Johnny Jackson would have been quite happy for him to have just said, "Do you know what? It was a bad day. Sometimes it happens. We move on."
Yeah, I think it's important not to get too overexcited about it.
Well, I don't think we're going to be doing that.
Yeah, in terms of you can analyze when you lose games, you can analyse it to you blue in the face a lot of times. I just felt we had no cutting edge. That was we had a lot of possession without really going anywhere. And there was probably some moments where we hit the post early on, which could have gone in, them sort of things. But it's the only time we failed to score in our opening fixtures. So I'm not overly worried about that. And yeah, I within 5 minutes I'd moved on. There's so many games thick and fast at the start of the season that it's one of those you can quickly recover with that. So yeah, I'm not going to overanalyze it, and I think it's just one of those afternoons.
Is that not part of our problem, though, Stu? You talk about we were struggling to break them down. Do we not have? I feel like when teams, we said it all last season, I feel like teams, when they're well organised and they defend their box well and they keep their shape and they're not too adventurous, we really do struggle.
Yeah, Bromley were looking to hit us on the break on the transition side of it. Hey, look, they're not going to come out. They matched us in a 3-5-2, but they probably more or less tried to stop our wing backs from getting forward and probably played in a 5. I think they wanted us to force the issue, and the first goal comes from a breakdown in midfield. on that, and then the second just comes, we just don't. Hey, look, their wing back just goes. Sometimes you just want to just take them out and take a tactical foul, as they call it. So yeah, the first goal. Hey, look, we had to push the issue. They've broken us, and it makes you wonder when Michael Cheek gets pace. I don't think he's ever had pace, but they did attack very quickly, and it was a good finish on that side of it. Second goal, you can pick holes in the whole lot of it. But yeah, Bromley didn't, and Bromley will probably do it a lot this season, where they'll probably sit deep, defend. They've got some very decent defenders with that, and then hit on the break, which is probably the right thing to do because budget wise and stuff, they probably haven't got the squad either, as we probably worked out when we beat them in the League Cup. Squad wise, we probably got more depth, whereas they probably got a good starting 11, which over a long season. It might come and bite you on the bum.
Yeah, I still feel that they will be fine. Like we said before we kicked the ball this season, we thought they'd be okay in terms of they wouldn't be not in danger of going down particularly. So I think that just sort of proved it. And there we go, 2 games into the season, 2 wins, 2 clean sheets for them. So fair play. Managers pretty switched on. The other thing about the commentary, the coverage on Sky was the commentary. There's been a lot of criticism about the commentator. I can tell you now, the commentator was a lady called Flo Pollock, and I'm just going to say, okay, she just. Well, you have to be very careful. I will say, yes, it's unfortunate some of her identification of players was poor. When we hit the post, she said we'd hit the inside of the post, which I think would have defied the laws of physics if that had been the case. But what I will say in her defence, I think solo commentary, what I've realised is because you watch the highlights back, you can watch the highlights back of these games and they use the same commentary. And it seems to me that the games that are on Sky Plus in Leagues 1 and the Championship get 2 commentators. You get a play-by-play, as they'd say in America, and say in WWE, and then and you have to be very careful how you say this word, an analyst, okay? All right? She's doing single solo commentary. I think that is a tough gig to be entertaining when you're the only one sat there with no one to bounce off or anything like that. You're the one driving it the whole time. And I think we have to give her a little bit of leeway with that. She's no Joey Styles. And let's be honest, Joey Styles was commentating on a fake sport where they were setting fire to each other and throwing chairs at each other. She didn't have that. Although she might have done had she been at Coney Hall about 20 years beforehand.
Yeah, it didn't change much from there, did it? Although, do you notice they had a dental practice on the opposite side? Did you notice that they're sponsored by a dental practice, and I think it actually is a dental practice.
Is that the tooth?
To be fair, if that had been there for the Coney Hall, they could have had a job lot. Anyway, no, do you know what? It's interesting you say it actually because I think Sky, as you got the league, so we've got 2 cameras, and then you've got 4 cameras in League 1, and then 6 cameras in the Championship. So obviously, the higher up the league, the more resources you get. Which probably makes sense. Let's be fair, Sky have taken on a massive to show all these games. You're going to need commentators. You're going to have to pick and choose where you send your commentators and how many you send. Yeah, I think a solo commentary is probably one of the toughest things you can get. Do you know what? It's one of those. I don't think we'd have said too much if we won the game. We probably laughed about it. But it's one of the other things that annoys the hell out of you, especially when it's buffering and stuff like that, isn't it? But I didn't notice about the duo commentators, etc. high up the lead. I've enjoyed the Sky Plus, Sky Sports Plus. It's the only one that I've actually found not perfect in terms of buffering here and there. But I think it's just our luck. Maybe it's just because it was in Bromley. Obviously, signal don't get that far out, does it?
That's probably fair. You know what, Stu? We should commentate on our games whenever we're at home. We should say you and I should do the commentary for Sky. Could you imagine? Be hilarious. It would be like Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler in their prime, or actually like Tom Phillips and Corey Graves, who are a better combination. But
I feel commentary, you just got to fill gaps when it's boring. So I could probably talk loads of rubbish while it's boring on that side of it. I'm not too sure though if I could stay impartial. Like I know, like, if you ever watched Ipswich, obviously Ipswich are on the Premier League now, but Mick Mills on their co-commentary was the most biased person ever. But do you know what? I really enjoyed it because ultimately he didn't make any apologies for it. And then when we beat them, he also had the right arm, which made it even better to listen to. So I'm not sure I could be as unbiased. Unbiased, whatever the word is, would be interesting, wouldn't it?
Final thing about this, Stu, we're going to have to bring it back. I'm afraid I've taken the decision. We're going to bring it back. So AFC Wimbledon are the first club this season that have done this, and AFC Wimbledon.
You just made the list!
Because why are we not in blue? There was no clash. Winds me up, Stu. Should have been in blue.
Do you know what? I understood the League Cup. I didn't understand the league game on that side of it. My gut feeling now is, we've had this chat about, it's not a change kit anymore, it's an away kit. I just feel like we're going to wear the away kit at away games. I think that's how it's changing a lot in football. I'm not saying that's right or not. I don't mind the kits, but I was a bit, could we not wear blue?
Do you know what the irony about this is? That the division that sold its soul, the Greed is Good League, the most horrendous footballing thing, empire, organisation that's ever existed, the Premier League, they, more often than not, if there's no clash, they won't change. I did notice this. I actually sourced this out to have a look. I saw Liverpool at Ipswich didn't change. Fulham at Man United didn't change. There were many others. I don't really care about this. I saw Spurs. I saw them on the news. They play Leicester, did they? They didn't change.
Yeah.
So Wolves, I think, were Arsenal. They didn't change. So just
is it a market? Is it a market employer? Not is it a case that they just sell the shirts anyway? Don't we need to promote it?
Possibly.
I'm not sure. I'll be honest with you, and I suppose we could ask Rocket and stuff. There's obviously but I just feel like it's becoming more a case that away kits are away kit, or when you lose. Let's be fair, right? Crew got absolutely hammered, didn't they? Crew are struggling like anything. I'd be changing everything for Crew if it was me. Like, wouldn't be wearing red at home anymore. Just anything to get the luck gone already.
We might actually come on to Crew very, very shortly. But first, let's move on to Don's Trust Matters. Okay, we are now joined by Jane Lonsdale and Charles Williams, who are two of the people behind the call for a Don's Trust SGM. And Charles, if I start with you, because we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of this and all the different resolutions and try and get our heads around exactly what's going on here with the call for this meeting and some changes perhaps to the Constitution. Just want to start by asking you, if you were a Teletubby, which one would you be and why?
In the words of FN Okoku on a Sky Sports interview from the mid-90s, Tinky Winky, because he looks like he's in charge.
Yeah, so this is an FN Okoku interview that you saw in which he answered and gave that answer. And to be honest with you, as a Teletubbies connoisseur, as you can probably imagine, was Tinky Winky really in charge? Was he? I suppose maybe.
I'm not going to argue with the chief.
I couldn't even tell you their name. I couldn't even tell you the names of them.
Oh,
I remember them running over a hill. Isn't that right? They used to run over a hill or something. I don't know.
I think that was Kate Bush. Jane, who's your favourite Teletubby?
I can name them all if that helps.
Yes, please.
Tinky, Dixie, Lala, and Poe.
And who's your favourite?
I can't remember. It's the yellow one.
Yeah, Lala. Yeah, she's the happiest.
Is that
one,
Lala?
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Yeah. I'll go with that. I'll go with you on that one. Right, that's it. Done. Thank you very much for your time. We'll right. Let's get into the actual meaning to this. So I said about this proposal of an SGM. I think last week on the podcast we referred to it as an EGM. Charles, can you just clarify the difference and that we are actually talking about an SGM as opposed to an EGM?
Okay, so EGM stands for Extraordinary General Meeting, and SGM stands for Special General Meeting. And Jane will correct me when I go wrong here, but in essence, they are the same thing. Our constitution talks about SGMs, so we are calling an SGM. It's the same. It's the same thing. It's basically a meeting of the trust that isn't the annual general meeting. So when the trust board calls a meeting that isn't the annual general meeting, that's an SGM, and we are calling a members-led SGM, which the Constitution allows us to do, which is basically a meeting where the members are calling the meeting and saying what it needs to be and controlling what we discuss.
So
is
now
that fair, Jane?
It's spot on, Charles. Well done.
Perfect. So then on to the obvious next question then, and a very short question with probably a very long answer. Why are you calling for this SGM?
Shall I have a go? So I think there's lots of different reasons. And I think lots of members over the last couple of years in SGMs and at AGMs and in on Pro Boards, which is the two-way member communication tool between Don's Trust Board members and the members of the Trust, have been asking questions, trying to get answers on certain things, and it hasn't always been forthcoming in response. There's been a load of governance changes over the last couple of years in the way that the Trust, which is the majority owners, interacts with the PLC board, which is the operational board of AFC Wimbledon. And all of those things put together have just kind of left people a little bit baffled, I think, about what is going on and why. And so people have been asking questions, not really getting the answers they wanted. And the group of people that are doing this aren't a friendship group, aren't they've kind of come together organically because lots of different people in different places were talking about concerns they had. And so over a period of a couple of weeks, a few of us got together, started talking to others, and we've formed this little group. There's about 14 of us, I think, on it. And we're trying to come up with a way of being able to have that conversation with the board. And the most obvious route was by calling a members SGM. To do that, we needed 10% of the membership to sign up. It's an unprecedented move. I don't ever recall there being a members SGM being called previously, and so that's what we're doing.
And I guess a couple of things to add to that. The areas where we think, due to some of those changes Jane mentioned that have happened, we are a bit short in terms of the levers that members have to influence what the board is doing, what both boards are doing, and to get members' views across. So not our views, no particular views, the views of members more generally, whatever it is they want to do. There are some areas where we need to look at. So one of those is around a more level playing field around votes, which are the resolutions that we're putting forward at this particular meeting. But the other two, which are things that we're going to come on to later in the year, hopefully, are around how easy it is to hold both of our boards to account for members. And there are a few things we think we can do around that. And around the security of our stadium, making sure it's absolutely copper bottomed, that we can't lose the stadium again. And the scenario where that happens is probably remote and a long way off, but we're trust members, and part of the point of a trust is to protect your asset, and in this case that's our club, for the people who come after us. So we just want to make sure we've got some additional protections, particularly when we're about to make, potentially an important choice around reducing the trust shareholding in the club.
Yeah, and we discussed this last week on the podcast because it's a really interesting period for the club when you think about it. So, we're discussing what's the difference between an SGM and an EGM, and to be fair, I didn't know the difference. And we've also gone into a period where we've obviously enhanced our membership by probably about 4,000 members in terms of season holders. And you could argue we're going into a most important time where we're going to restricted actions, which the last one we've done was back in 2 ticks. So that's why, I mentioned to Nick last week, I think it's really important we cover this in quite a bit. But Jane, it's probably quite important now to get people online. Don't get me wrong, we said before we started recording that some of the legal jargon can sometimes be a bit boring and stuff like that, but really, really important. So it's probably really important now that the new members as such understand the what's going on and what could be impacted, I suppose.
Yeah, it can be quite complicated, and it also can be really quite dry. Governance is not I happen to be a governance nerd, but governance can be really boring, but it's there to protect you. The point of it is there to protect you. And governance, when we talk about it in those senses, are things like our constitution, things like our company law, ultimately, because that's what AFC Wimbledon PLC is. It's a company. Our football club is a company, and so we're bound by company law. The trust it's a society, and that has its own constitution, which we're acting within by calling the SGM. And so there is lots of jargon in there, and we're part of the conversation that we want to be having is to cut through all that jargon so that people understand what the reality and the risks are, so that they can make informed decisions when it comes to those votes. Because I feel up until this point, we haven't really had that information. We keep being told there's information coming. The first restricted action vote is on the 28th of October. We had a financial update earlier on in the summer, but we haven't had the pros and cons of it. We haven't had anything about what it means to go below 75% voting rights, what it means for minority shareholders when that happens, what it means for majority shareholders, which the Dons Trust is. So it is quite dry, but it's also vitally important that people understand when they are voting what the consequences of those votes are. And we just need to be really clear that we don't have a shared view of whether going below 75% is the right or the wrong thing to do. It's about getting the information so individuals, our trust members, our majority owners, can make informed decisions.
When you start talking about, voting rights below 75%, that's something to me that's a concrete issue, or something that people will know exactly what we're talking about there. But to be honest, with a lot of this, a lot of conversations have been going on, as you say, the jargon can be quite confusing, and some of the things we're discussing can be quite almost nebulous in a way, not really sure. So the 75% thing is a concrete, absolute thing we can probably discuss and people can get their heads around. But that's not part in the immediate time. That's not part of the resolutions you're putting forward to, is it? That's not something that's up for discussion at this SGM. That's sort of not a separate issue, but a next step along the line issue. If I've got that right.
Yeah, it's a kind of why now, because I think if you think, as we do, that there are ways that are the way in which we vote as a trust membership could be better, you would want to implement those before the most important vote we're likely to have in some time. But it's not about making that result easier or harder or anything like that. There's a mix of views on going below 75% of the fan base. There's a mix of views in the group that's organising these resolutions. Personally, I'm quite open to it, but what I would say, going back to James' point, is that when questions have been asked about some of the detail around protections and the risks, because there are risks. I mean, obviously there are risks, otherwise there wouldn't be different rules for different shareholding, right? The assurances haven't been forthcoming, which has introduced doubt in my mind about it. So we just want to make sure that, so what the resolutions that we're putting forward do in summation is they make sure that we have the debate before the vote happens, which sounds mad, but that isn't currently what we do. And that, if members want something, most members want something, it should happen, which again sounds uncontroversial, and I think it is uncontroversial, but again is not currently how we're set up, and we can talk about that when we go into some detail. So all of those just to me seem like, and to all of us seem like, quite sensible things that we should do anyway, but have a pressure on them where it would make sense to do them now before we do something quite important.
Yeah, and obviously, resolution-wise, one of the resolutions I'm looking at is the third resolution, which is basically changing the cast of votes, isn't it? So there's a difference between a Dons Trust board resolution and a members-led resolution, which I've always found I've always been like, I'm very straightforward, as Jane would point out. I'm basic in terms of that. If I think you get a majority, game over, let's move on. That's not the case, Jane, is it?
No. So for resolutions that are presented by the Dons Trust Board, they require a simple majority to be voted through. For resolutions that are presented by Dons Trust members, so members' resolutions, it requires 2/3 majority to go through. So it's an unlevel playing field to start with. Now, historically there'll be reasons why that was set up when it was set up originally, and you need to be clear as to what you are doing when you're putting in those resolutions. Would it make it any easier for kind of a rogue person to put in a resolution, remembering that you've got to have a proposer and 5 seconders who are all members to start with, and you've got to put an argument alongside the wording of the resolution itself, and the Dons Trust can put in their argument either to support it or to set out other options. Would it be easier for something really rogue to go through easier? I think we've got to trust our membership. Our members are quite intelligent people, and I'm not sure that they're going to do anything to damage the club by just leveling the playing field.
If you look at the members' resolutions from the last few years that were closest to passing but didn't, these are things about improving accountability to members. So it's things like more FaceTime from the PLC board with members. It's things like, service level agreements and more responsiveness of the Dons Trust board when they're asked questions on Pro Boards, which is the Dons Trust private forum. It's things like asking for more details about the way the chair of the PLC was appointed. Those don't seem like crazy, outlandish things to me. And under other circumstances, they might have passed.
Yeah, if it was a straightforward majority vote, some of those would have passed.
But potentially, there were other reasons why they didn't, in terms of what the Dons Trust board said about them and other things. But those were the ones that were closest to passing. And some of them would have passed on a simple majority in the room on the night.
I mean, I'm looking at these 5 resolutions here, and they seem pretty uncontroversial. Jane, you've just talked us through basically resolution 3 in terms of how to organise a vote and how to put forward a resolution and making sure that it's the same for the board and for members. 1 and 2, as you touched on earlier, Charlie, about the making sure that the debates are held in full before votes are taken or anything like that. Resolution 4, no recommendation from the board. And resolution 5, fully hybrid meetings and making sure people that are present in the meeting and also people that are following online can be as involved as each other. These all seem pretty straightforward, logical. I can't see anyone having an issue with any of these. I guess why I'm confused is then because there's been a lot of noise about this whole thing. What am I missing? Where's the controversy? What's going on? I don't get it.
I don't think you're missing anything, Nick. They're not controversial. I think that's the point. Like, we are not a group of people trying to who really want to make a fuss and cause trouble for some reason of self-aggrandizement or whatever. We're quite sensible people, really. And I speak for myself, I suppose, but they're not controversial things. The other things we've got planned are not controversial things, but they're not happening. So at some point, you've got to say, well, let's make them happen.
Do you know what's interesting? I'm just looking at it, and obviously the humour in me is that resolution 3 needs 2/3 to pass.
Yep.
Yes.
It does.
You're right. It does.
Yeah, you can't see past that. Just laughing to myself with it. Do you know what? From a personal point of view, obviously, I obviously help the Dons Trust stream the meetings and stuff like that. And recently, when we had a few meetings, the frustration I've had sometimes, so I'm really in favour of these resolutions. I'm playing why is because sometimes there's been times when I've changed my mind due to discussion within the room. And I also know that the vote's no point because most of the members have already voted beforehand. And I've sort of raised questions on that. So when I saw it, I was like, well, that to me, it's just common sense. Do you know what I mean? Because to be fair, Jane, obviously, I've seen you at quite a lot of the meetings and there's been some really good discussions in there, really thought-provoking and totally changed my mind. And I'm sure would have changed some people's minds within that. So,
and when you have that discussion and debate, things that you haven't necessarily thought about will be discussed and debated that may inform you even more because you're having that backwards and forwards with the board or with other members or whatever.
Yeah.
I think the other thing to mention is the resolution where the board where we're suggesting that the board shouldn't make a recommendation. What we're not suggesting there, and just so it's really clear, is that the board should give as much information as it can to support or to counter the resolution that's put forward. That's the bit that we're saying they shouldn't do is direct on you should vote for this or you should vote against it. They should give all of the information because, again, we think our members are able to make a judgment based on the information they're given, based on the discussion in the room, being able to listen it back if they so wish to, and then to vote.
Because, Charles, we haven't actually got, I agree with that in terms of resolution the Dons Trust making their recommendation, because let's be fair, they're going to carry a lot of weight within that. However, we've had, I think there was one resolution where the Dons Trust board actually changed their mind. But it was too late by then because the things have been set in stone. So this is a logical thing. Do you think it's, without getting in terms of getting too involved with the governance thing, do you think it's something that we've just overlooked? And obviously let's be fair, technology's changed. Once COVID came in, we all went hybrid, didn't we, and stuff like that. Is it just a case of us catching up, and it's quite a logical thing?
Well, I don't know if it is. So it seems logical to us, and I think for members it's very good. I think when you're sitting on a board, it is a comfortable position to be in, to have more control over what the votes are. And there are, very good reasons why you as a board have an agenda that you want to get through, and there are things that you want to put in place, and it is easier to do those things under the current arrangements. It's like, why would turkeys vote for Christmas? So I think, Jane's being a Dons Trust board member, I've been a co-opted Dons Trust board member. The way to get these things through is for them to come from outside through something like a members SGM, because otherwise it's never really in the interests of a sitting board to do it, being totally honest. Is that fair, Jane?
Yeah, I think it is. And I think so I don't think the board has ever thought, when I was on the board, I don't think we ever thought about it in those terms of going, is it easier? Because I was on the board when we did the back in 2 ticks, which was the last restricted action that we did. And there was, if you say it in black and white, that was, we wanted our club to sell the ground that it was using, right? You would go, no, we're not doing that. You're never going to do that. And so and we knew that it was a restricted action vote that requires huge amounts of percentages on 2 votes within a month's period. And a huge turnout. So to do that, we spent months and months and months informing members why we wanted to do that, with booklets and open meetings and a whole load of stuff to go with that, because we knew it was such a difficult thing to get through. And when you say in black and white that you want to sell the ground, nobody would want to do that, right? Why would you want to sell your ground? And so huge amounts of effort went in. And I think the thing for what's happening right here, right now, is that we haven't seen that information for the stuff that's going to be coming yet.
Yeah.
And so it's a steep ask, but it's not impossible.
It's interesting, because I was just going to say, you're right. I remember the full glossy brochure and stuff like that, and I can only imagine the work that went into that. It's why it chuckled me a little bit for the Colchester game when there was a distribution of the leaflets, because it's probably the biggest action I've seen regarding a Dons Trust thing, if that makes sense. I was quite shocked with that, sort of lying in with the. Was that more a case of, if you think about it logically now, most of the members are season holders. The large majority are season holders now. So was that really just the best place to get that message was at Plough Lane at a game? And also the wording. I said last week, I found the thing that I saw straight away was broken trust. I didn't actually read anything else. The first thing I saw was broken trust, which was very not aggressive, assertive in that. Was there a reason to make sure people didn't just pick it up and throw it as a paper airplane, as they do at Wembley? Me and Nick saw many a times, bashed on the back of the head. Was it that to do?
I mean, as we touched on, in order to do what we're trying to do and call this meeting, we have to get 10% of members. That's quite a high bar to meet. That's, as we now know, more than 600 signatures in a relatively short space of time. So you do have to. I think if we're approaching people and going, can we explain to you about corporate governance and resolutions and things? It's not going to be straightforward to do that. So you do have to attract people's attention. I mean, I wrote the leaflet, with input and agreement from the other people in the group. So if there's flack to take on it being aggressive, I'm happy to take it. But I would say that, a large number of people have found it resonant. And what I would also say is that, we have been very careful not to make this personally about the Dons Trust Board, the PLC Board, because it isn't really. It's about the institutions and how they interact and work together. So I know some people didn't like it, but what I would kind of ask is, what actually is it that you don't agree with?
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. To be fair, it wasn't so much. I was trying to think of a different word to aggressive because to me, I read it and I was like, yeah, I agree with it. And I sort of understand your point about the 10% was such a high bar. And let's be fair, that was achieved. Like we've seen, like let's be fair, resolutions don't normally get put forward. Over the years and years, hardly any. Kept being reminded, put a resolution in, and then you guys come along and put 5 in at the same time. I was going, yeah. But that was what it was, wasn't it? I suppose. So I get that. So it was really important then, obviously, Charles, to do that. And what did you get much response? Did it? Because I'm assuming you got majority of signatures quite early on, from what I understand.
So we had probably just under half of the eventual number in the first 24 hours that we started talking about it on social media. So before the Colchester game, but we knew that the Don's Trust Board wasn't able to advise us on the membership number because of the new membership arrangements that they've put in place. Their estimate was that it was like 5,500, 6,000. So we knew we needed to gather as many as possible as quickly as possible, and we needed an impactful way to do that. But as it goes, I mean, we were really surprised by how quickly we were able to gather those signatures. It was less than a week, really, for something that, when you're reading the detail of it, it is, improving our governance and is not a particularly sexy topic. Actually, the level of support has been quite extraordinary, I would say.
And Stuart, you asked about the Colchester game and the timing. So the reason we explained earlier that we wanted to do the members called SGM to have effect if the resolutions are successful, so that they have an effect for the big important vote that we've all got to do on the 28th of October. And so when you call a members SGM, you have to put a requisition in, fancy language, basically a request to the secretary explaining exactly what it is you want to do and send the resolutions with it. And the secretary then has 28 days in which to set that meeting up. So the timing was quite important for it to have an effect. If the resolutions are successful, for them to have an effect for the 28th of October, we need to do it soonish.
Yeah, I'll let you come in just very quickly. What I was going to say, the Colchester game was good timing because obviously we conceded 2 early goals and I was a bit distraught at that point. And then someone sent me a picture of the leaflet and I'm like, oh, here we go, happy days.
We haven't tracked whether there was an uptick in responses after the first 8 minutes.
We had nothing to do with the 2 early goals.
What was funny for that game, we had some issues with the audio, obviously, within the Wi-Fi replacement. There's been some challenges with that. And I just got it fixed and I looked up and Goodliff's knocking it in. I'm like, what is going on? So actually the first actual commentary from Mikey T and Rob Cornell was the goal conceded. So I was pleased that I bought the sound back for that important moment. But yeah, timing's everything in it. But then, of course, 70 minutes later, the world's an happy place, and let's move on in that football.
There you go. The only football club in the country where you can be 2-0 down and think, right, let me reach my phone and sign a petition to the owners to get this done straight away. Don't see this any other places.
Because you are an owner.
Indeed. I am indeed an owner, as are about 6,000 other people, I'm guessing now. Let's get this timescale. Can I get this time scale straight with you guys then? So SGM, the number you needed, 10%, has been reached. So that's all gone forward. So this SGM is going to take place before another meeting on the 28th of October.
Yes, and just to confuse things slightly, in the meantime, so from the point of us saying we were going to do this, the Don's Trust Board has called another SGM on the 23rd of September. The members SGM will be before that meeting on the 23rd of September. We haven't got a date yet, but it will be the week or 2 weeks before that meeting.
So you're going to sandwich a certain fixture with a certain Buckinghamshire team right in the middle of those 2 meetings, just throw that grenade into the mix as well.
But the 23rd of September meeting hadn't been announced or wasn't a thing before we had advised them that we were going to be doing this. We weren't aware that was going to happen. And then you might recall on the Wednesday a couple of weeks ago, there were 2 statements that went out from the Don's Trust Board. And one of them was that they were going to have an open meeting and then that morphed into the second statement, which was about calling an SGM.
For what purpose? Sorry.
So I think they have said, I need to find the statement, but I think it says something about to discuss the restricted actions and to hear and to talk about members' views. So it's very much about, it's doing what we've been asking them to do for quite a while, I think, which is to start the information of ahead of the restricted actions on the restricted actions about the pros and cons of 75% and da-da-da-da-da.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a good thing. That is a good thing.
Discussions with the Don's Trust board where they were saying, could you put your resolutions in for this SGM that we've called on the 23rd of September instead? And that clearly has some attractions in terms of we don't all want 85,000 trust meetings all autumn, but we don't think we should do that, because the benefit of the members-led SGM is that we control the agenda of that, and it is purely to discuss and vote on the proposals that we're putting forward, and we think that gives them a better chance of succeeding and having the right focus. Because if you're putting those in a meeting and then you're going to have a large conversation about going below 75%, it's really clouding the issue and making the whole thing very confusing. So that's why we're not doing that, even though it results in more meetings.
And it curtails the time for that discussion. So
exactly.
So it would mean that you'd have a really, really packed agenda, and we've all sat in SGMs over the last couple of years where conversations have been cut short because of a packed agenda. So we want to make sure that there is sufficient time for members to have their voice.
Yeah, it's an interesting time, because I think the most important thing here is that we're all owners, we're all fans. And this just feels like a little bit where we're bouncing heads against each other when we really shouldn't be. But it is a really important time, and I think I'm going to spend quite a lot of time at Plough Lane this season with the extra meetings and stuff like that. But I think they're really important, aren't they, in terms of bringing it together? What in terms of turnout are you hoping for? Are you hoping that as many, because we know historically that the meetings at Kingsmeadow, going back to Kingsmeadow and Plough Lane, aren't the best attended. On that, are you sort of like, not to panic the club of opening up a bigger lounge, but are you trying to hope that as many can get along to, even though yes, it may be boring, I agree, I think it's a really important meeting, and the time where we all really need to go and try and make sure we do the right thing where we can.
It's really hard to judge how many people, because we got overwhelming support for the call to call the meeting. I have no idea how many people will turn up on the night. I would just strongly encourage everybody to come along if they can, and hopefully it will be live streamed and then people can watch online as well.
And I would say not everyone who has supported the call for the SGM supports all of the or indeed any of the resolutions. I think some people just think, actually it is members' right to have these things put forward, and we want to have the discussion, whatever the outcome of it is.
Yeah, they will be streamed, because I've already been asked to stream it. So you create more work for me, Jane, as usual. Thank you.
Apologies, Stu.
Do you know what? Do
you know what the date is for it, Stu? You can tell us.
Yeah, that would help, wouldn't it?
There are top secret things going on. No, in all seriousness, I will say is I've got no problem at all dedicating the time to it, because I think it's a really important issue. And I think, as fans, it's really important we all get the message. So that's why I saw the resolutions. I was like, yeah, totally agree with that. Sorry, Nick,
no, it's fine. I was just say it's massive. I think it's massively important that this is streamed. As you make the point there, Jane, people that I include myself in this, very, very busy lives. It's very difficult to find the time sometimes. So actually, it doesn't take 2 seconds really to put your name on a resolution or 4 resolutions online, but it takes a little bit more effort to get down to the stage and to take part in a meeting, and we have to be wary of that. And there is a couple of other things, but I'm not going to get into now because I'm conscious of time, that might assist with that. But this is all leading up to then, I guess, and I am conscious of time, and we have kept you for a good while this evening. But this the restricted actions votes, I'm guessing we are talking about the potential of lowering voting rights of the Don's Trust below what is currently the threshold of 75%. I've got that correct. To
voting rights, yes.
Yes, voting rights. So potentially down to essentially 51%.
50.01.
50.0. It is 50.01. Okay, thank you. Because this is
that wording. It's so awkward. You have to keep typing it all the time. 50. I mean, like,
Well, it's because
it's not.
it's because
Well, it's
the
not a 51, but
50
it's
plus
not actually
one has
not.
become the
Although
go-to
you
phrase,
shouldn't
isn't
be.
it?
Although, Nick, to be fair, you shouldn't be using a 51% as of now, anyway.
It's a
Little
it's
in
a
joke
it's
there.
a it's a rounding error of a majority is what we're where we're going.
There we go. And I'm sure that is I think that has got sort of, as we said earlier, that's the next step along the line once we get past these first couple of meetings in September. And I suppose they'll probably have a bigger conversation about that another time. But in terms of all the resolutions and the meetings coming up, SGM, it's a lot clearer. Having spoken to you two guys now this evening, in my head, as someone, as I say, very busy, and it's difficult to sort of take in all the information. I think people use this phrase now, bandwidth. I don't have the bandwidth for it really, but that's actually cleared up a lot of it for me and made it very, very straightforward in my head. So thank you for that. Is there anything you want to sort of put out there before anything else that needs to be done for members, or there's something they should be aware of prior to whenever this first meeting takes place?
No, I don't. Well, Charles, you might want to come in. But the other thing I was just gonna mention was on the leaflet, and lots of people have asked us about, and Charles set it out earlier. This is part of three things. So this is about voting, which is the first thing. Then there is accountability to members and that relationship between the Dons Trust Board and their interactions with the PLC board, with the Dons Trust Board being the majority owners, and then the safeguards to the stadium. And I think that some of that, we've had quite a lot of questions around that. So if you wanted us to cover any of that, happy to.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say as well. So, what we said in the leaflet and on the sign up was that these things that we're putting forward at the members SGM are kind of first steps, and there are some other things that we would like to achieve around those other areas, hopefully later in the year, which to be honest, we think should happen regardless of what the decision is around lowering the voting rights. They're important things either way.
And this is safeguarding the. Sorry, you just say safeguarding the pitch. This is one of those we're discussing, are we?
Yes. So I mean, there's some new things that can be done. So at the moment, I don't know what safeguards are on our pitch, and if there are any, I'm not aware of them. And so if and we know that from there was a Meet the DTB that I listened into, and they would talk about other levers and things that they can do around fundraising and things, and so. And around finance and having a sustainable club and all of that kind of thing. Obviously our pitches and our ground is our asset, right? And so we don't want to lose that, and so we just want that protected. And there's a couple of things that you could do around that. So there's a thing called an asset of community value. It's a new thing. It's an ACV. It's something that local authorities have. You could basically make the pitch an ACV. To protect it. It doesn't mean that somebody can't come in and buy it. It means that you are notified and you have a period of time in which to manage that should that ever happen. And it's a similar thing like that has saved Southend. So they got notification that somebody had come in to buy them, and that would have meant that they got notification they were able to mobilise in a way that helped manage that. I'm not saying that would happen, but we need to be really careful that the things that matter to us most, our club, our pitch, our stadium, are protected. The other thing you could do is something similar around what Chelsea have done, a pitch owner scheme or something like that.
Yeah, and I think it's been really, so obviously from this discussion and what I've chatted to you before, Jane, is obviously I was a bit unaware where the leaflet distribution and the stadium stuff, but I totally get it now in terms of there's a staged, not a staged attack, but obviously there's a way you got to do it. I get that. No, I get that, and I also get what Charles was saying in terms of it had to be a little bit more out there to get the attention. And that makes perfect sense to me now. But the nuts and bolts of it is this 50.1, whatever it's called, the lowering thing is a really important. That's why it's a restricted action. We didn't put restricted actions for the fun of it because they're very difficult to pass. But it is, and I'm sharing the concerns. At the moment, my mind is a little bit unsure. I would like to know the pros and cons. So I think that's how you make a decision on that, isn't it? And yeah, my concern is coming up to October with the first vote, with no real clear idea of what I'm going to do on that side of it.
Well, hopefully you'll get loads and loads of information from the board between now and then to be able to make an informed decision, and that's what we're asking for really. Is we want people to be able to make informed decisions, and part of the voting and the restricted actions around that will help you to be able to do that. It's not about hindering it or making it easier or harder. It's about making it so that you can make informed decisions.
Nick,
Cool. Great. No, that's great. Thank you very much.
I have to ask, by the way, because we've got you on a football podcast. What are your thoughts of the season? I'm Jane. How are you seeing this? Jane, obviously, we had a funny. I hope you don't mind me telling you a story because I've told it to a few of the players. And
I don't know what you're about to say, which is worrying.
Well, see, I know you struggled pre-season. We didn't have names on the back of the shirts, recognising players. And do you know what? There was actually a funny story last night. I noticed Harbottle, who's our new Riley.
Riley.
The life of Riley, yeah. He also had the same challenge as you did, Jane, because he had to call Byler when he was looking at the back of his shirt last night defending.
Yeah. I really struggle if I don't know how we coped in non-league, that I really struggle if they haven't got their names on the back of their shirts.
So that made me laugh. So the story, obviously, Jane struggled to recognise new players during pre-season, even to the extent that she was a bit unsure who our new number 11 was, when actually it was the same number 11 as last season.
I was like, who's that new person? It's like, that's not a new person. He's just had his haircut.
He's had a haircut, to be fair.
I did mention it to Josh, and he found it highly amusing.
Don't say that. That was well, I own it. I literally said to my husband, "Who's the number 11?" It's like, that's Josh. I was like, a new Josh? No, it's Josh Nerfield.
To be fair, you're not alone. My wife did the same thing. She struggles, and when players come back, it makes it easier for her. So when Joe Piggott arrived back, and that it was and obviously Joe didn't confuse us all by getting a new different number. He obviously got the 39 because obviously
they all have names on their shirts now. So I'm a happy person.
They do. But how have you found the season so far? Obviously, 3 wins. Enjoying. Obviously,
No, Stu, no. We've only played 3 games. All right,
Still
we know
season.
this. No. We've played 3 games and we've lost
4
one
games.
of those. No, we haven't. No, we played 3, and we lost one of those. So we've only won 2 games. I'm just making that point. There we go.
I'm with you, Nick, on that.
There we go. But how have you?
Charles, how
Two
you found the season so far?
Yeah, so I don't go to the game that didn't exist for the same reasons. I think probably. Didn't go to the game that didn't exist. I used to love that competition.
I have no idea what I did last night. Now it just feels like it was a blur. It didn't.
It's gone into a black hole.
So I've only and I didn't go to either Bromley game, which I probably should have done because I live in Bromley, the borough, not Bromley, the town.
You have to be very careful to stress the difference there. Yeah.
Yeah. My son has learned about bragging rights going into preschool because people support Bromley around here, so that's been good. But no, so I've only been to Colchester. I'm really looking forward to getting to another game. First 8 minutes was obviously some of the worst I've seen us play in a long time, and then after that we looked pretty good. Ali Smith looked really good. I thought that we've got 4 different good strikers for the first time in a long time, and can they make up for us not having Ali Al-Hamadi for half a season? I mean, it's the best strategy you can come up with to replace a player like that is go with 4 decent strikers. So that gives some optimism, I think.
And you talk about one of the strikers. I have to say, obviously, we lost Josh Davison to Tranmere, and I thought we'd lost that hair. That hair was amazing hair, but we replaced it with Matty Stevens, who's someone said to me he's like an 80s pop star with that hair. Like, it is like a lovely guy, but what a head of hair, Jane! Like, amazing. I know, obviously, me talking about hair is that's why Nick's laughing.
But I have said to him, what a head of hair.
I did say to Matty Stevens. I did say to him,
what's he like as a footballer, Stu?
Stu's not interested in football. It's all hairstyles for him now. That's all it is.
No, it's the first thing I noticed, and I've said this to him. I said, we lost a striker last year, and we replaced him with a great head of hair, and I don't think he knew how to take it from me. But yeah, I just. But you're right. No, Charles, I think you're right, Charles. In terms of got some really good attacking players in there and a big squad. But it's the amount of games that are coming up, Jane. It's literally like, obviously Ipswich next week. The return of Ali, but unless he gets loaned out.
Yeah.
Do we kick him? Do we kick him, Nick? Can we catch him? That's be the main thing. But
Do you know what? It's going to sound really harsh, Stu. I've got to be honest with you, but I actually don't care. Al-Hamadi was great for us, but I never took to him. I don't think as much as I. Do you know what I mean? That sounds weird, but like it doesn't do anything for me. I think I'll be a minority there, but yeah. I don't know. The thought of him coming back doesn't excite me in any way, shape, or form, like it did or has done with other players in the past, like a Danny Kedwell or a Lyle Taylor or something like that.
No, I get what you're saying. I'm not worried about it. I mean, he wasn't here for a full season, but it was a pleasure to watch, and obviously very, very good player for the period he was here. I mean, it was comical at times that some of the goals he scored, But yeah, no, I mean, he wasn't here for a full season. He can't be a, club legend or anything like that. But hopefully, we'll down the road make us a lot of money. So,
yes.
All power to him.
Yeah, and obviously with Lyle Taylor, it was really disappointing he didn't turn up for Colchester game.
It's because he knew you were there going to be there, Stu. That's right. I thought I got away from that Deacons at long last.
And another lovely head of hair. Obviously, in my old age when I'm losing hair, I think I'm just literally... It's just weird when you look at people nowadays, do you know what I mean? But yeah, anyway.
Okay,
sorry,
podcast overboard. I think we need to move on. Jane, Charles, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us on.
Right, very quickly, Stu. My father was a John Joe O'Toole maker. I might try and get some music for this game. Let's see if I do it for this week. Your people listening to this podcast will know if I've done it or not, and if I haven't done it, it's because I've got too much other things to do. I don't have the time. But I'll do it for next week if I haven't. Anyway, very quick one. Player that used to play for us with a link to Cheltenham Town. I think this is going to be a good one for you. I think you will get this one. But the first clue is cryptic. And very simply, this player was certainly a Don Juan. This player was certainly a Don Juan.
Well, that sounds Spanish to me. Don Juan. Well, yeah, pronounce that. Can't think of any Spanish links with Cheltenham. But as we've also got quite a few players that have played with both clubs, I'm going to go with Alan Bennett, just because there's no link to the cryptic, because I know if I try to overanalyze it, I'll get no closer.
Do you know, it's good, but it's not right. But Alan Bennett, he was on my list of possibles, but it's not Alan Bennett. Okay, clue 2, this player scored in Neil Lardley's first official game in charge as manager.
And I'm trying to think. Obviously, we had quite a few transfer dealings, didn't we, in a transfer window, and I think he might have been one of them. I'm now trying to remember his name. Was it Harrison?
What's his first name?
Mr. Harrison.
Mr. Harrison. I don't think I can give you that, Stu, until we get the first name.
I can't think what his first name was. John, Billy,
no.
Dave.
Keep thinking.
Byron.
There we go. Look at that. I thought you would. I did think you would get it.
Jog my memory.
There you go. I'm impressed. This works well for you. This game, yeah. Byron Harrison. The third clue.
I just remember the squad, and obviously because it was Neil Ardley, that obviously he'd done quite a lot of work, didn't he, in the early windows.
He did, but I think Byron Harrison was actually a Terry Brown signing, and but he scored an equaliser away at Fleetwood Town in 2012. Third clue, he was a striker that's helped us into the FA Cup second round in 2012, and the first meeting with Milton Keynes. He scored in that replay with York City, although Charlie Strutton famously was probably the winning goal scorer, but Byron Harrison scored that night as well. Yeah. The cryptic clue, Don Juan, obviously a poem by Lord Byron. So that was the link there. League 2, Stu, Crewe got smashed, as we just mentioned earlier. 5-0 at home to Chesterfield. The other notable result for me this week was Warsaw. Long trip over from Poland, but they won 4-0 at Swindon Town. Swindon and Crewe are the early crisis clubs in League 2. And guess what? They play each other this weekend.
Oh, really? Crikey. Yeah, Joe, Crewe, I'm not overly surprised, just because they normally... well, obviously Twitter now is such a great... you obviously get people talking about clubs, and there was a few people, Crew fans, who were a little bit worried about their recruitment and stuff like that. So sort of sense they weren't. I think they got a few injuries as well. I don't think they have a great squad depth. And Swindon, I think Swindon are a basket case. I think there's a few things behind the scenes they were talking about in terms of financially. I don't think their fans trust ownership at all at Swindon, and sometimes that goes onto the pitch, doesn't it? Not too sure how good Walsall are. It's very difficult to know how good these teams are. Chesterfield hitting, was it 6? I'm not too. It's still 5. It felt like 6. Probably his Crew fans. I think it's just a case of early days. The league's taking shape at the moment, isn't it? So I think, although there's teams like Accrington and stuff like that who were tipped to struggle early, and they're sort of doing that, aren't they, at the moment? And let's be fair, right? In the teams down the bottom of the league, you thought they were going to be there, apart from one, and we're happy they're there because it's even funnier.
Yeah, I have no idea where they are this weekend, but I obviously also don't really care. Walsall, we mentioned, they go to Tranmere on Saturday. 2 teams that have yet to concede a goal. Who speaks better English, the Scouse of Tranmere or the Polish of Warsaw? We just don't know.
Whatever it was, it'd be a great conversation to be in the middle of, wouldn't it? You wouldn't have a clue what either were saying.
No, it'd be like trying to work out what Liam Trotter's doing on a football pitch. Got no chance. But anyway, Cheltenham away on Saturday, and Cheltenham, managed by Michael Flynn these days, last season relegated from League One. We beat them in the FA Cup last season, you'll remember, at Plough Lane by 5 goals to 1. So far this season, they have won 3-2 at home to Newport, lost 3-2 away at Grimsby, injury time winners in both of those games, 1-4, 1 against. So a pair of teams that are scoring but conceding goals so far this season. We have not won at Whaddon Road in 5 attempts as AFC Wimbledon, with 1 draw and 4 defeats.
Yeah,
what do we reckon?
It's a lovely part of the world.
It is beautiful.
This time of year, going to Cheltenham, end of August, probably be great. I'm not going, but it's still a lovely place. Difficult one, form wise. Obviously, we've sort of not recovered, but obviously getting a win in the week has sort of helped. With that, it's always a good win, no matter who you play.
We joked about this with Jane and Charles just moments ago, in fact. But there was a fixture that was played against Wickham at Plough Lane on Tuesday night, which we won 1-0. Riley Harbottle got some game time. Omar Bugle scored the goal. So take
and do you know what? It was interesting. There was 1,500 people there, which was quite a large attendance for that fixture. But it did feel like the days of going back to Blackburn when Shearer and Sutton played at Blackburn, and it was full of kids. It did feel like it was. Right. And there's nothing wrong with that, because the kids are the future. But I think that's why the attendance was a bit inflated with that. Those games, when you look at games where you don't want to pick up injuries, and I did feel a little bit number 10 Leahy come in and got absolutely flattened by Bugle and went off limping. And you just sort of feel sometimes you don't want to pick up injuries in that competition, because it's not obviously one of the thing. But yeah, good squad utilisation of it and stuff like that. So we get and first clean sheet of the season, which that's always good. And John Joe O'Toole, bless him, the caveman. We did an interview with him. He's absolutely hilarious. John Joe O'Toole. I have to laugh with him. I'm not too sure with Cheltenham. I think we're doing all right this season. I think the season's, let's be fair, 3 wins. If you not doing it to wind you up, but there's 3 wins. It's not a bad, 3 wins in 3 competitions, as Johnny Jackson said after that. So I think we're okay. And I think we're going to be hard to beat. I don't think we're going to lose there. I think possibly a draw on that, and then also we go into a full week of the games are not letting up. Let's be fair on that side of it. So we're going to need to, in all seriousness, on the win over Wickham, it did show the squad. We made 10 changes. So I feel we're in a better place of not, we're able to leave Jake Reeves, Joe Lewis out of it, which I don't think we were able to do last year. So I think we will get through these fixtures okay, because it's obviously it's a sprint, not a. Sorry, no, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, it's a marathon, not a Snickers. I'm going to go, Stu, Cheltenham. I'm going to say it's going to be a thrilling 4-all draw. Okay, there's going to be goals, and nonny. Right, that is it. Thank you very much for joining me this week, Stu.
Thank you.
Updates, of course, on Twitter, as always, at 9YRS Podcast. Thank you very much to Jane and Charles for joining us this week. Another little longer episode, but hey, there's a lot to talk about. But that is it. That is us for now. Alexa Bliss, bag first, milk last. 2 + 2 = 4. And we shall speak to you again next week.